Oh God, you can really smell the lavender now. That's really taken off. Oh, that's good. And my sorrel's well past its best. You know, lockdown was kind of tough on a lot of different people, and you know, I just ended up using the things that I found, a bit like a modern day womble. So using things like the pallets that I found to kind of build raised beds, to build tables, to build planters, to, you know, I mean, things like this, these bricks were all washed up on the beach, and just things that I found, and trying to think of, rather than spending money on gravel, try and use something which is not natural, these bricks, and reuse them in a really interesting way. The whole thing about the gardening and using up what other people were throwing out meant that I wasn't spending money, using up resources. I was being a bit thoughtful, mindful about what I was doing with the resources that I had. And you know, and in my studio I've got a huge amount of resource. And I thought, rather than, you know, adding to that stockpile, let's, you know, be a bit more thoughtful about it. Well, I think we kind of have to be quite mindful these days about what we do, and that goes for packaging for the items that you're making. So when I'm posting things off, I'm not using any plastics, and I'm not using plastic tape, I'm using sticky paper tape. And I have to say, I've never, ever, ever used an acrylic yarn in my work, because what happens to that acrylic yarn? I mean, my polyester shirts that I was wearing in the 70s are still kicking around somewhere, I'm sure. Whereas things like the linen and the wool, that's all natural materials, and that will, at some point, biodegrade. That will go back to where it came from. I don't want to be that maker that just churns out textiles, the same thing over and over and over again. I kind of need to be proactive. I kind of need to be engaged. So this collection here was my kind of lockdown collection from last year, and this is using the kind of Japanese Zori and Zanshi philosophy of using your leftovers, and they're quite blocky in colour, but using things like mohair against cotton, against Shetland yarn, using ribbons and having that kind of woven in as well, and then using the same yarn structure throughout. But what's quite interesting is that once it's washed, you get this difference, what I would call differential shrinkage, where some of the yarns shrink in quite a lot and the other ones don't. So you get these very, very uneven selvages, which actually is just part of the character of the cloth, you know? So now I've kind of moved that project on, or that idea of thinking, where I'm still using that philosophy of the Zori weaving, where I'm kind of making do with what I have in the studio. That's kind of influenced this, obviously, but I've mixed it up. Instead of doing a cloth that's solely Zori, I've mixed it up with a double cloth structure. So I'm kind of trying to do two different things here at once. I'm trying to marrying one philosophy with a different weave structure. So this piece here, this is a big sample where I'm kind of looking at the different weave structures that I need to go and make the cross. So I'm kind of resolving all sorts of design problems here, technical problems, how one section will marry up against another section, So this is kind of almost like a sketchbook of ideas, if you like, in the one piece, where I'm kind of resolving, and I end up with the completed cross, which I was after. I kind of found it very meditative, I found it very relaxing, I found it, you know, hugely enjoyable, that thing about not having to think. And all through the pandemic and the lockdown, we were constantly thinking, are we doing the right thing? Should I be doing this? Should I be going there? And it was just so much thinking. And the thing about the studio practice doing the Zori weaving, I actually didn't do anything, and I just did it.